Here in front of me is the eRide Pro SR, and installed on this bike is the new EBMX X-9000 V3 controller. Today I'm going to walk you guys through the new app for this controller as well as the new colored display that it comes with. So let's dive into setting up this eRide Pro SR on the app and showing you all of the features and functions within both the display and the app itself. Alright, so first things first, let's go ahead and get the new EBMX X Series app downloaded. This just now hit the marketplace, so I'm going to go ahead get this onto my phone. Now that that's downloaded, let's open it up. It's going to say connect. I'm going to click there. I'm going to allow it to find Bluetooth devices. Now it is not going to find any Bluetooth devices right now because my bike is not on, so let's go ahead and turn this on. The bike will power up, and then you will see, once you click search, EBMX X-9000 V3 controller will pop up. Let's dive right into it. So this is a full new app. You can see here on the home screen we have got the street mode and race mode. Clicking into this will actually change through the street mode and race mode on the display as well. It shows the power output, the controller temperature, how many phase amps you're putting out, as well as the motor temperature as it sits. Now coming over to the settings screen, you're going to see a bunch of different settings. You can adjust parameters within the battery, power modes, motor, throttle, peripherals, as well as your profile, and what's called wheel lift control, which is a new feature they have added to this controller. Up here at the top it says setting. Next to that there's a diagnostics page, and then next to that is a firmware page. Come into here, check for updates, just click on that. Currently says that I am up to date on this controller, so no problems. You definitely want to make sure that you're up to date first things first. Now coming over to the profile page, you'll see a bunch of different things. You can rename your bike if you would like to, so I'm going to rename this controller to eRide Pro SR V3. Shows the controller serial number below that. Now currently, because I have not yet set this bike up correctly, it is showing my motor as an eRide Pro 2.0 motor and my battery as a 72 volt eRide Pro 2.0 battery. Now this is obviously not right, so I'm going to come back over to the settings screen. I'm going to click on battery. I'm going to find the eRide Pro SR battery. I'm not going to touch anything. The app is already set up for what this bike should be tuned to. So now that I've got that battery selected, everything there will be good. I will come back. I'm going to go into motor. Now this is very important. Make sure that you set your motor type correctly. So I'm going to click eRide Pro SR, and then it's going to ask you to calibrate. When you do this, the bike will start moving. So now it is moving my rear wheel. It is calibrating this motor specifically. Give it a second to run that. And there you have it. It says encoder successfully calibrated. Now that I've got that calibrated, I'm going to click this up into gear 1. Make sure that my wheel is spinning the correct direction. So when I first calibrated this and I hit the throttle, I lightly went on the throttle and the wheel spun one direction briefly and then spun the other after that. So because of that, I went ahead and recalibrated it with inverting the PWM. Now that that calibration was done, I hit the throttle. It moved with no problems, but it was spinning the wrong direction. So I took it from clockwise, which was spinning it backwards, to anti-clockwise. Let that go, and now it is moving forward. We are all calibrated and ready to go on this bike. So now that I've got my battery type selected, my motor calibrated, I'm going to come into the throttle page and go to calibration over here. Let's go ahead and calibrate both our main throttle as well as our thumb throttle on this bike. To do that, I'm going to click main throttle calibration. It's going to pull up a setup wizard. Click start there. Be sure to make sure that your bike is in 0. I'm glad that it sends that warning. Click start setup wizard. It's going to count down. Just keep your hand off the throttle. Now twist the throttle from minimum to max. Do this a couple times. I usually do it about 3 times, and then you can just let off there, and it will show from that point your minimum voltage is 0.81 volts and your maximum voltage is 4.6 on this specific throttle. Now if you've got a throttle that is a dual hall sensor, this controller is now ready to take a throttle like that, which is super cool. That is something that needs to happen in this industry badly. We need dual Hall throttles because they've got two sensors, and if those sensors don't perfectly align with each other, that means there's an issue with that throttle, and it will prevent the bike from running away. Now, most of these bikes do not have dual Hall throttles, so you'll have to find one and get that installed aftermarket. But super cool that EBMX is now one of the first controllers to be able to enable a dual Hall throttle into their system. To do that, you just go ahead and check that box and you can recalibrate your dual Hall throttle. Now let's go ahead and calibrate our thumb throttle. I'm going to do the same thing. Click that setup wizard, get that going. Once it counts down, I'll go ahead and push in this throttle a couple times. It's going up to 4.8 volts. Let off there. Showing 0.78 as the minimum, 4.8 as the maximum, and we're good. All right, so let's go back into the battery page. I had already set this up to be the eRide Pro SR battery, but let's look through a couple of the features. So in street mode here, we have got 200 amps as the limit, and in race mode, we have got 250 amps as the limit. That is what EBMX has deemed good for this bike. Below that, you've got what's called low battery power reduction level. So as the battery starts to draw lower, this is where you're going to start to feel power getting reduced. That way you don't get a cutout. Cutouts can be very dangerous while riding, so they put in that feature to make sure that that doesn't happen. I usually run this at about 10% on my bikes. And then below that is battery voltage protection. If you want to be sure to protect your battery, make sure that it will not get to that minimum point, go ahead and click that on. That's a good safety feature so that you don't drain this battery enough to kill it. All right, let's back out of the battery menu now. Come back over to the settings page here. I'm going to move into the power modes page. There's a lot of stuff that you can adjust here in power modes. So you've got your street modes and your race mode. I usually run my bike in race, so I'm going to stick here in the race modes. Now here in this menu, you've got mode after start. I've currently got it selected to race, which means if I cycle the bike off and back on, it will now be in race mode. And then going down to power levels, you've got levels 1 through 3 and adjustments for both the actual kilowatts and the phase amps. Here you can see level 1, I'm at 18 kilowatts at 600 phase amps. And level 3, I'm at 30 kilowatts at 800 phase amps. That is a huge number. That is a ton of power. And down at the bottom, I can also determine reverse strength. If you're in mode 0 and you click down on the display, it will put the bike into reverse, and that is where the reverse strength will come into play. Now I'll scroll back up a little bit. It'll come over to regen. This is going to determine the strength of your regen brake on the bike. And then I'll come down to speed limit. You can put a speed limit on here. It's currently at 200 kilometers an hour. That doesn't mean the bike is going to hit that speed limit. It means that it won't go anywhere above that. So if you've got a kid and you want to put a limit on this bike, you can go ahead and set that limit for them in this mode. Then I'll come over to field weakening. They've got it set to 80% on this bike. I'm going to keep it there. Field weakening is essentially your top end. So think of phase amps as bottom end, field weakening as top end. As you come up towards that kind of higher RPM, field weakening is going to engage and it's going to allow the bike to rev out. I'm going to leave it at 80% until I test this bike and know if I want to take it higher or lower. So we'll back out of all of this back to the settings page. Go into the motor configuration. Now I've already shown you guys how to tune the motor and get that set up, but I'm going to take you through the temperature control that it has here. This is where you can determine how high or low you want the temperature to start to cut off. They've got it set to 120 degrees Celsius as the cutoff start and 130 degrees Celsius as the cutoff end, which essentially means that if you get up to that temperature, you'll feel the motor start to kind of pull power away from things. And then if it gets above that temperature, it will slowly shut the bike down so that it doesn't overheat and ruin and damage this motor. Now, if you've got a temperature sensor that doesn't work on your bike or it's malfunctioning, you can just go ahead and turn the temperature sensor off on this bike. That way the motor will function as normal even though your temperature sensor is bad. I do not suggest doing that. I would suggest having a temperature sensor that's functional on your bike, but if it ever happens, that is a way to bypass it by clicking that off button there. Now I'm going to click on FOC tuning. Now this is something that you could tune yourself within this menu. I don't suggest doing it. EBMX knows what they're doing, so leave it to what they've got. It throws up a disclaimer. If you accept that disclaimer, the liability is on you for tuning this motor. So I'm not going to mess with that. I'm going to go with this bike the way that EBMX has it set up. I'll come back out of that menu. We'll go over to the throttle. Now EBMX has changed a lot about the throttle page on this bike. It is really cool to see what they have done. So you've got quite a few different adjustments here. So if you come down, you've got a polynomial, an exponential, and a natural curve. These are all different curves that you can play with in the system, but you can determine the shape of these curves by going to throttle shape. So if I want to add a lot of bottom end punch and have it taper off towards the top, then I can put it to the positive side. If I want it to roll on smoother on the bottom end and then pick up towards the top end, I can pull it down to the negative side. I usually like having it in kind of that fashion, have a really controllable bottom end, and if I really want to get onto it, ramp up into that top end. You can determine how sensitive you would like the throttle to be. I personally really like the throttle to be as sensitive as possible, really take my input the moment that I give it. So I put that at 0 milliseconds. You can determine if you would like a throttle deadband, which means if you twist the throttle a little bit, it'll have a little bit of play to it. I don't like any throttle deadband. I will pull that down again to 0. And then throttle off time essentially means once you let it off, how many milliseconds until it reads off. Once again, I like all the control to be within my wrist, but it's cool that you've got all of these different variables that you can change to suit your own personal needs and determine what you would like to do. Now I'll scroll back up to the top here and I'll come over to regen setup. Now this is how much regen you've got when you let off of the throttle itself. I don't really like running very much regen. I'm going to pull this down to about 15%. If I wanted to fully turn it off, I can just click this button here and turn it all the way off, but I'll keep it at 15% for now. Now I already took you guys through how to calibrate the throttle here, and then over here on throttle type, you can determine what the throttle does. So you've got your main throttle, which only has the ability to either turn it off or turn it to acceleration. But then over here on your thumb throttle side, you can determine what you would like it to be. So you can make the thumb throttle actually work as an accelerator if you would like. You can use it as a regen brake, or essentially an engine brake instead of using your normal brakes. And then you can turn it to an E-clutch. Now personally, I actually use it as an E-clutch quite a bit. I think that's a really cool feature that they implemented into this. So that's what I run my bike at. But most people usually use it as regen brake. Nothing wrong with that. I think that works great for a lot of people. Back out of here, let's come over to peripherals and profiles. So this is where you can determine quite a bit of things. This is where you're going to set your gear ratio and the wheel diameter. This is ultimately going to calibrate the display for your bike. So I would measure the wheel diameter from the bottom of the tire to the top of the tire, put that in millimeters and put it into here. And then I would also find the gear ratio for the eRide Pro SR, make sure that that's set up right for the sprocket and gearing that I have on this bike. You can also determine what you would like the units to be measured in. It's currently in metric, which is why you saw kilometers per hour earlier in the video. If I change it to imperial, it's now going to be in miles per hour. And you can also determine what type of display you have on the bike currently. So if you've got this on a stock Ultra B, you can utilize the stock Ultra B's display. EBMX also makes a colored display that goes here in the center of your handlebars. You can get that display updated and use it on this controller as well. And then if you've got brake sensors and a stand sensor, you can also turn that on and off in this app as well. Now if I click over to XML profile, this isn't something that you should ever have to worry about. This would be where you kind of load in a motor tune. So if EBMX were to ever give you a motor tune, you would come over to this page, load that into the bike, and then it would work. That's usually going to be used for very custom type things. Like let's say you've built a bike, you've got a custom motor in that bike, EBMX helped you tune it. They would probably give you a file for the motor that you are trying to tune. And then lastly, in the settings page, there is wheel lift control. Now this is a super cool new feature that they have implemented. I'm going to dive into this much further in a future video. This is a major assist. Depending on what you're trying to accomplish, you can set it up to your own personal needs. So once again, I will make a separate wheel lift assist video for the EBMX V3 controller. All right, so that sums up the settings portion of the app. I'm gonna come back to the main display. Now this display can be utilized when you're actually riding the bike. So if you've got a phone mount on here, this display is pretty awesome because it's gonna show you a lot of really live data going on, like power output, phase amps, the temperatures of your bike. But if you click this expand button here, it is gonna flip it over to a sideways screen that is really nice to be a display on your bike. So if you phone mount this thing to your bars, then you'll have a really cool display to be able to see everything going on within your bike. Now here in the main display, if I click in the top right on the two lines, you can see a couple of different things. We've got the dashboard. If you click on that, it's going to take you right back to the screen we were just on. But you can also register this controller for warranty and create a support ticket if needs be. This is good communication from the app to EBMX, and you can also find a dealer here at the bottom. It'll show you every dealer on the map in your location. Well guys, that's pretty much it for the app itself. So let's move over to the new SW102 colored display that comes on this bike. All right, so here's the new colored display. You can see here that I'm in race mode. If I want to switch this over to street mode, I'll hold down on the bottom arrow here. That'll flick it over to street. I'll go back to race mode real quick. Now, if I want to select what mode I'm in, I can click up. It'll push me to mode 1, click up again, mode 2, and mode 3. Come all the way back down, and I can click this into reverse. Put it back into 0 for now. In the top left, you will see your battery voltage, and in the middle, you'll see your miles per hour. If I click this menu button here, you will see the power output as well as your RPM, so the kilowatt output itself and then how fast the motor is spinning. If I click it again, you'll see your motor temperature and your controller temperature. Click it again. This will read peak kilowatts and peak phase amps. This will reset every time you turn off and on the bike. The next menu button shows the duration of the ride you're on as well as the distance that you've gone. And it will show you your max speed and average speed within that ride. Once again, this resets when you turn the bike off and back on. You'll see this looks a little bit different. It shows race in a different form as well as your mode in a different spot. We've also got a new UI here that's going to show you a couple different things. Very similar to the one when you first turn on the bike. It will show you your miles per hour, your voltage, your mode that you're in, as well as race versus street mode. But below that, it's got a couple rollovers. The upper one will show phase amp output, and the lower one will show regen. So when you let off the throttle and regen comes back into the bike, you will see that there on the display. And then if I click it one more time, it is going to show me an overall odometer of miles that you've put on this controller. Click it again, and I am back to that main mode there. Now, if I hold down this M button here, it is going to show you a trip. You can click into that, view your trip, view your battery info, and clear the trip if you would like to. And I'll click return. I'll come down. I can change the brightness of the screen. Just click M to get back out of that. And then I'll click on system. Now, this is pretty awesome. This is a new feature that they've added to this display. I can make it be either a level bar or numerical. So now that I've switched it to numerical, if I come back out, it's going to show that my battery is at 90% instead of showing you the voltage and the bars. Now I'll go back into that system menu there again, and I can come down and see device info. So this shows the serial number of the controller, what firmware it's on, and what hardware this controller has. All right, I'm here back in the very main menu that this display pops up on. In the app, I have enabled wheel lift support. To activate it while you're riding, you just double click the top here, and you'll see that it'll pop up with the angles that you have adjusted this to. It'll show in real time the actual angle of the bike itself. And then if I click through the menu button, you'll see it says wheel lift assist on in yellow. This is showing you that just so that you know that it is currently on. To turn it off, just double click the top there again, and wheel lift assist is no longer activated. Well guys, that is a full walkthrough on the EBMX X Series app with this new V3 controller, as well as the colored display that comes with it. If you have any questions, please comment them below. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I look forward to actually getting out there and testing the eRide Pro SR with this new controller on it.